Well, welcome back to the Reality Halfway House. Today we're going to be talking about scripts, life scripts. Are you stuck on one? Do you get to choose? We are caught between worlds. This is the Reality Halfway House. I'm your host, Jones Nelson. Well, first and foremost, before we jump in, just learned just a couple hours ago, Dolly Parton has passed away at the age of 80 years old. Now, I mean, I grew up listening to classic country music and so forth, and Dolly Parton certainly is in the bedrock of country music, classic country as we know it today, kind of Western music. I mean, she's kind of all over the place. And so just wanted to take a moment because I am a musician. I'm an audio engineer. Never had a chance to meet Dolly, but I've worked with multiple people that did. So I just want to take the opportunity just to say, rest in peace, Dolly. Thank you for all of the contributions and everything that you've made to the music industry. Now, I know that the jury is out, on Dolly Parton. I know there's some people that, especially in, kind of the alternative media movement, have attributed, kind of some menacing sort of attributes towards Dolly, but at the end of the day, I think ultimately none of us know how everybody's pieced together, especially as we're starting to see there's so many different people out there that are claiming one thing and another. I've heard, again, I come back to the whole if somebody tells me to refill my popcorn and get my popcorn one more time, I've just about McFrickin' had it, as they say. I also wanted to just touch on just a little bit, too, because I want to get into this. We'll keep an eye on it and then continue to discuss it. But Gary, Indiana, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but they're still without power for 14 days now. 2 weeks in 2026. Gary, Indiana is without power. And see, this begs the question, are you prepared? We talked a little bit about that yesterday, and we talked about kind of physical preparedness, right? And what that looks like, making sure you have, some food and water for at least a month, if not longer. Some of the videos I've been watching have said to prepare for at least up to a year and a half, up to 18 months. The grid could potentially go down. Again, a lot of this is speculation. They said that we would have all died from the hole in the ozone layer. There's so many different things that they've said, all the doom and gloom and the sky is falling, et cetera, et cetera. However, now the power has been out for 2 weeks, 2 full weeks in modern society. Again, the United States is supposed to be first world, right? Some might argue that Indiana's kind of outside of that, but I would submit to you that that's a long time. No matter how you slice it. And the rumor tree is also saying that there are parts of Arizona, there's parts of California that have been without power. And I think that it's probably safe to say that some of this has been blown up with just overall hype because of what's going on in Indiana. I mean, there's brownouts and power outages, kind of throughout. But I think that it is incumbent upon each one of us, though, to make sure that we're looking at this through the lens of preparedness, but not only physical preparedness. And I wanted to take a moment to just kind of talk about this before we kind of dive into the main topic today. But I think with what's coming, with the event, whatever that happens to be. I don't know, is this a power outage? Is it a disconnection? It's like, what is the event ultimately going to look like? Is it earthquakes? Is it like the dude on TikTok, the Leviathan's going to wake up and come and eat us all, kind of a thing. There's a lot of different things that it could be. I mean, I'm certainly not, let me put it this way. The dude on TikTok is actually pretty convincing. You got to, take everything on the internet with a grain of salt. But if you've never really looked into it, just look up, I can't remember the guy's name. I wish I could remember it off the top of my head, but he's talking about the Leviathan and waking up. And I don't know, man, he makes some interesting arguments to all that. But the preparedness that I want to get into today, which I feel like gets undercut quite a bit from the physical side, because we are physical beings. We're living in this third dimensional world, and so therefore our needs and wants, we want them to be met. But see, here's the thing that I think a lot of people aren't thinking about or preparing themselves for. In the event of a big event, where we are, kind of knocked off of our traditional course. The spiritual and the mental aspects, I think, kind of take a back seat to the physical, because the first things people, think of traditionally whenever you think about preparedness are, oh, I need to make sure I have food and water, ammo, shelter, some da 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 da. I mean, those physical components. But the thing is, and I think a lot of people, again, don't put enough stock in this, is the mental and spiritual component that goes along with it. We're all addicted. I'm just as guilty as everybody else, but we are all addicted to the kind of the niceties, the electronics, the internet. We're addicted to it. We're on it every day. It's interesting. I deleted social media off of my cell phone because I was just spending too much time on it. And it took me a couple of days to kind of stop the whole grabbing for my phone to just check. And even then, it's like today I'll find myself pulling it out to check, and it's like there's nothing on there except for email or text messages. But it's just this grab, right? And we've all been addicted to something at some point, whether it's sugar or tobacco, drugs, alcohol, pornography. I mean, there's any number of things ultimately that you can fall into addiction. But I think a lot of people don't realize that our addiction to the internet and the addiction that we have to just like kind of the intrinsic stuff that come along with that, our Netflix, our social media, etc. And all of a sudden, if the grid goes down or the power does get shut down, in addition to trying to have to survive physically, you're going to have to immediately start detoxing from this addiction that you have. And a lot of people aren't thinking about that. See, the thing is, I've seen video after video, especially of the younger kids that have just grown up with the internet. They've never known how to exist without it. We talked a little bit about this before, but suffice it to say is there was one video I watched where the gal was, I don't know, she's probably 15, 16, and her mom took away her cell phone on an airplane, and she completely just broke down and had a temper tantrum. Now, that was an extreme example, but the thing is, there are so many of the kids today, and I say kids like the Gen Zs, that do not know what life is like without that device, because as long as they've been alive, they've had it in their hand, right? And so when and if the power gets cut, yeah, they're going to have to feed themselves, but they're also going to have to come to terms with like interacting in life in a way that they've never had to before. My generation has existed before and after, and it will be just like any other generation. Even the boomers and the Gen Xers are going to have a hard time with it too, because we've all have that device in our hands and we all have the addictions. It's like we had the internet go out last year at one point for like a day, like it was out for the day, and it was like, man, we wanted to go through and in the evening kind of relax and, put on, Hulu or whatever it was and watch our shows or movies or whatever. And we couldn't do it. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. We had to like break out the DVD player and stuff like that. And it was like a minor inconvenience. But now imagine that you have no electricity, you have no internet, and you're going to have to adjust to that. Again, I, in my generation, know how to exist outside of that because we did, but it's still going to suck. Like, again, it's still going to be extremely hard. But I don't think that we have really thought about the mental preparation that is required to go through and to kind of weather that storm. Now, my personal opinion in all of this, I think that it's going to be ultimately extremely helpful. It's kind of like, if you're going to go detox from alcohol or drugs or, whatever, the best, or cigarettes, nicotine, the best thing in the world you can do is to just not have access to it. But at the same token, those like addiction symptoms are going to be just really tough. And I don't know that we truly know what it's like to go through a digital detox like this. I mean, I've gone through several digital fasts where I've completely gotten off the internet, and it was tricky for a couple of days, because it's like you have kind of that pull to get back in there. But at the end of the day, it's like I weathered the storm all right. But what if you're doing that at the same time as going through and trying to figure out how you're going to cook your next meal. You're trying to figure out how to go through and make all of the stuff in the refrigerator and the freezer last. I mean, you're basically trying to do this on top of everything else. It's kind of like trying to quit smoking when all of a sudden you have an incredibly stressful week. All you want is a cigarette. Well, now suddenly all you want is to be able to doom scroll, and you can't. It's gone too. Everything is gone, and it's happening all at once. But the thing of it is too, maybe this is a blessing. Maybe this is the event. Maybe this is where our healing comes. You know, a lot of the prophets have said that in addition to there being a wealth transfer, that just like the Bible says, the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous, that there's going to be a health transfer. It's like when the Israelites were leaving Egypt, the Bible says there was not one feeble among them. So they're saying that there's a health transfer coming. Well, so dig this, though. You hear a lot on the internet, and again, you have to take everything with a grain of salt, but you hear a lot of rumblings, especially in the outer edges or the fringe of, med technology and other things like that may be potentially coming. Again, sounds great. You kind of leverage back to movies like Elysium, where they have med beds. If it actually in, what is that movie? Stargate. They had like a med bed in there as well. I mean, so this is not like something that's new. I mean, this is a concept that we've seen in movies throughout the years. But they're saying, at least through some of the channels that I see, that they're absolutely out there and that they're going to be coming up soon. Well, they're supposedly, based on these channels, if you believe any of this stuff, it's going to be based on frequency. I was praying about it one day. And I was just asking God, he said, well, so what's the deal with the med beds? Is there any validity to this? And he just asked me, he came back and he said, well, what if you didn't need them? What if you didn't need the med bed? And it's like, well, wait a minute. It's like, would it kill you to give me a straight response? It's like, come on, man. But I got to thinking about that a lot. And what if we are just simply being hindered in our healing? In other words, we have been unable to heal because so many of us are sick and in disarray. We've been unable to heal because of frequencies and other things like that. There's a lot of scuttlebutt about, 5G, 6G, all the Gs, But, I mean, if you look back over the course of time, you can trace back, pandemics to like the introduction of different types of frequencies that have entered into our existence, like radio frequencies. You get into telegraph and so forth. You can actually, if you do the research, I don't have the breakdown in front of me, but there's a lot of research that basically suggests that when you have a major introduction of like frequency into our world, that we as human beings react viscerally to that and in the physical. I've worked in radio my whole life, or most of my life. I started in 15. So I've been in and around like radios and transmitters and all kinds of stuff like that for a long time. And I will say, and you can call me crazy, but I will say that at nearly every radio station I've ever worked at, there has been some ghostly activity. And I don't know why. I surmise, and I kind of guess that it has something to do with the amount of power that's being generated by those places, and the frequencies that they kick out. Because remember, you got these giant transmitters, 50,000, 100,000 watts that are kicking out all this juice. And in the process of doing that, we would see all kinds of crazy stuff. That'll be a story for another day. But suffice it to say, in almost every single radio station I ever worked for, and I've worked for almost 24 radio stations, I've had some sort of interaction with something that I can't explain on kind of the ghostly realm. Every station, except for the ones that I'm working at now, and the only difference is they have transmitters on site. It's all digital, and it's all super like low energy, low output. They don't have these big old school like really heavy duty energy producing transmitters that are on site like that. So at this place, I'd like, in every other building I'd walk in and it would just get the creeps, man. And we saw stuff, and it wasn't just me, like we all saw stuff. They're like, dude, holy smokes, I thought I was the only one, kind of a thing. So I wonder though, with all of the frequencies that we're exposed to, if all of a sudden, if they all shut down, what would our bodies do? Like, imagine for just a second, okay? Just imagine for just a second that your body, again, because we know that our bodies heal themselves, right? I mean, you get a cut and you leave it alone and let it rest. Your body, provided that you have rest and nutrition and everything else, is going to go through and heal that cut. And we see that all. I mean, unless you've been living under a rock, I mean, you know that that's how it works, right? And if you follow along in Scripture, you see Jesus, who didn't have to. By the way, this is always something that people talk about, and they're like, "Oh man, it was so awesome, he healed people." But if you'll notice, Jesus actually said, "Dude, I came to fulfill the law." He took a side turn, like he took a deviation from like why he came, and was just like healing people. Like I don't think people really pay enough attention or give enough credit to that. Jesus looked at people and was like, "Man, these guys are suffering. We got to figure something out." And he started healing people like consistently. And some people, I mean, I know people come at me and say, "Listen, man, that was part of his mission also." But I mean, if you look, Jesus said, he said, "Look, man, I came to fulfill the law." I mean, and if that's the case, where are the healings in there other than he looked at people and saw that they were suffering, and he is a big softy and said, "Nope, we're not going to do that." And he stepped into the void and helped heal people. I think my personal feeling on that is that he was showing us what was possible. But see, think about that again in terms of frequency. Think about that. And I'm an audio engineer. I edit audio and frequency all the time. So the transients, the waveforms, I edit these things and spend time just like looking at audible frequency waves all the time. I mean, I'm just constantly in the middle of it. And so imagine for just a second, our bodies are inundated with all of these different frequencies all the time. You don't even have a choice. Your Wi-Fi is going off, your radio, you got radio signals, you got 5G, 6G, whatever, all the time. There's just you're constantly being bombarded by signals all the time, all the time. And imagine if all of a sudden it shut off and your body, which is an electrical vehicle, because it is, I mean, you've got your nervous system, you're an electrical vehicle, now suddenly is not bombarded by all of those things. Okay. So then what happens with it? I mean, part of me wonders if that's not where we're going to see just massive healing. Like spontaneous massive healing, because you got people like my brother-in-law, for example. He had his leg amputated. He got hurt in the military, and he got his leg amputated. And again, he's spoken of like the phantom leg pains and so forth, where it's like he gets itches, or like his leg will hurt on a part of his leg that doesn't even exist anymore. That, I mean, people have talked about that forever. I mean, that is it's like, how does something itch that doesn't exist, or that isn't physically there? So it makes me wonder then, if kind of coming back to like what God proposed, he said, what if you didn't need a med bed? What if just simply the lack of this stuff is going to, facilitate? So I've thought about that a lot too, because at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a situation to where whatever the event is, we're probably going to have at least some level of a power outage. I've heard people for the last couple of years say, make sure you've got at least a month's worth of food, or a couple of months worth of food. Now people are saying, well, you need to have 18 months. Well, the thing is, I just don't think any one of us are ever going to be prepared enough. We talked about this yesterday. I don't think the preparation in the physical is ever going to be enough. I was watching a video today, and this guy's like, man, we've got like years worth of food. And he's like walking him through his prep. And I'm like, why would you show that? Like, why would you, if you had years worth of food, like, why would you broadcast that? I just don't know. But anyway, I just don't think even in that situation, like, what if somebody came in and stole it? Or what if there was a sinkhole under your house and all those fell through? Or what if it flooded? Like, you can never, my point is, no man is promised tomorrow, and we can sit there and we can prepare all we want, and tomorrow can change everything. I mean, I don't know. Like, I just think at some point the best preparation that you can do is to prepare your heart and your mind, and then do your best to go through and physically prepare your body. Because at the end of the day, Jesus even said, look, dude, we're just transients here. We're just passing through. Birds have nests and foxes have holes, but the Son of Man has no place to rest his head or lay his head, right? So it's like we need to understand that we're just temporary in this existence. Okay, so if you put so much emphasis on the physical, you're kind of going back to that example where Jesus was talking with the rich man, and the rich man's like, dude, what do I need to do? I did everything to follow you. He said, sell all your crap. I'm paraphrasing. You sell all your crap and come follow me. So it's like we put so much emphasis on the physical and not enough emphasis on the mental and the spiritual. And I think that is ultimately going to be a great disservice to a lot of us. The Bible says that in those end times that men's hearts will fail them. And again, I'm paraphrasing when I say all this stuff. I mean, I've been through the Bible a couple of times, and that doesn't make me an expert in any stretch whatsoever. But it's like, enough to just kind of pull from it here or there. But the thing is, I think the reason why men's hearts will fail them is because they're not mentally and spiritually prepared. Like, again, the prophets have been saying, God has corroborated this to me. Again, I am not a prophet. I'll say that every time. I do not have the mantle. I'm not a prophet. I'm just a guy that tried to give God space. Believe it or not, I shut up long enough to just let him talk because, it's important to me to have that relationship. But the prophets have said over and over, and I used to think it was malarkey up until recently, and then I would hear something from God, and then I'll hear it. I'll follow. I follow several of the prophets today, and they will corroborate exactly what he said. I was like, holy smokes, man. I mean, there's actually now something to this. But they've said that he's fixing to move in a way that he's never moved before. And again, he's corroborated that to me. But I don't know what that means. The best way that we have to describe it, or the best guess we have, are the times that he's moved in the past, when he's flooded the earth, which he said he's not going to do again, right? And then when he parted the Red Sea, so when we saw that happen with Noah, we also saw it happen with Joshua. We saw Elijah go through and, stop the rain. And I mean, there's a lot of different instances where we saw God move, but we don't know. And the prophets have said he's going to do something completely different. Again, I'm just a guy with a microphone. You got to do your own research. I'm not like asking you to believe anything that I say. All I can say is that with whatever is coming, and I think probably the best thing that any of us can do is to just try to educate ourselves. And I think kind of the purpose behind this podcast in a lot of ways, I mean, for one, it's kind of cathartic for me because it gives me an opportunity to be able to kind of just open up and talk about stuff that has been of interest to me. But the other thing is to encourage you to be able to go through and to step outside of yourself and start looking at the bigger picture. At the end of the day, all of this, and I'm just motioning to probably the last 10, 20 years, has really been to wake people up. And in the last several years, just a couple of years, especially since, COVID, you've seen a huge surge of people waking up from their quote unquote slumber. You're seeing people start to pay attention and to start asking questions that otherwise we wouldn't have asked. And the thing is, and it's scary because you're starting to see people when they get close to the target start to kind of vanish from existence. And the thing is, I've thought about this too, like getting on here and talking and having a podcast. You kind of put a target on yourself, but none of us are promised tomorrow. And I can't in good conscience, just continue to move forward and not be able to go through and to speak out or to say something. I just can't do it. I think, again, like we talked about before, our greatest point of power is not so much the physical, right? I mean, we've seen all throughout history where people end up coming together physically to go through and to solve a problem. But I think the first step in that is really more of that spiritual and mental component where we actually end up coming together really as a society, person to person, and to really to kind of have that connection again. We talked about this a few days ago because that connection has been what's set or has been severed from what we have. Because I think what the internet has done is it's created the illusion of connection, right? It's creating this like mask of connection with each other. It's okay, think of it like this. It's like playing video games, right? Like my kids and I will play Call of Duty sometime, and they'll all be on their, Xbox or whatever, and I'll be on mine, and we get in there and we're playing together. We're connected, but we're not in the same room. Like we're all connected and playing together, but we're not connected at all. Whereas when I was a kid, you play Super Nintendo and they're on the couch next to you playing and it's on the same TV and screen. It was a completely different sense of connection. And because we'll do that sometimes where we'll go back and we'll play on an old console like Super Nintendo or Nintendo 64 or something like that. And we're sitting in the same room on the same couch. It is a completely different experience, right? Or you're sitting down to a board game and you're playing and it's a completely different experience. There's a connection there that is not present. Even though you're talking to each other and you're collectively playing together, you're still not connected. This is an illusion of connection, and the internet has provided that for us. And it's crazy because it creates all of this extra stress and all of this extra agita because you're constantly seeing what's going on around the world. You're hooking up with people online and talking and connecting, quote unquote, with people online that you've never met before, probably will never ever meet. It's like going into the comment section. It's like most of these people have an opinion, but you wouldn't ever take in real life. It's like you would never ever take an opinion from these people. And yet, I don't know. I just think that the internet has been a great disservice and has been a great deceiver in terms of connection. And I think that the first step in healing is really, truly being able to bring about that connection, right, with each other. And that ultimately is going to get us, I think, closer to a healing state. Because here's the other thing, if and when that event comes, which I think we're getting close. I mean, I think a lot of people can feel it. I see all throughout my feed, people are saying, dude, I don't know what it is, but man, I can feel it. It's just like there's something coming. And I think ultimately it's going to be intense. And then on the other side of it, it's going to be good. It's kind of like going to the gym, or going into surgery. You've got this big, intense event that's going to be hard in the moment, but you're going to be glad that you did on the other side. It's like an ice bath. If you've ever done an ice bath before, or a fast, like a long-term fast, it's an intense event. It requires sacrifice. It requires that you endure. But on the other side of it, the hard thing is going to come a period of like restoration, healing, and you're ultimately better off on the other side. That's my 2 cents. So all of that connection comes back again to this notion that we opened up the whole podcast with, and I talked a little bit about earlier on a kind of a short reel. It's that we're all living out this script, right? And this script is something that they kind of handed out to all of us. The script is that you're going to go to school, you're going to go through and get a job, you're going to pay taxes, you're going to, try to attain this house and kids and everything. It's like this, all of these different things. It's like, again, in playing a video game, it's like they've got a compendium, or they've got a kind of your objectives that you have to meet. And they give us all these same objectives, which is asinine because everybody's different. I mean, everybody's different. And we've talked on this show before about how I truly do believe that it's like God has like tattooed your soul with like your purpose, because there are things that drive you that don't drive other people. Like my wife is really great at being able to work with people one-on-one, and she's really good. And she talks to me, she's like, you're really good at like talking at people, like speaking. Like, again, I've been a radio DJ for almost 30 years. I've been a lead singer for years and years, like singing in bands and so forth. I'm not having those one-on-one conversations. And she's like, but that's a skill that I don't have, and that's a skill that's important. Just like, being able to have a one-on-one kind of skill is important too. And so everybody's got something different that they're good at, that they like. And for most people, you don't ever get to experience what that is, right? You don't ever get to experience being in that, the ability to be able to kind of walk that out, because you're trying to follow the script that you've been given. Go to school, get a job, buy a house, et cetera, et cetera. Have the 2.5 kids and a dog, white picket fence, plug money into your retirement, Social Security, so that, you can retire for a couple of years and then die while your body's all worn out. It doesn't make sense. And, it's interesting because I'm in the process right now of going through and applying for jobs. I think I'm over 200 applications in at this point. And I've had, I've got an interview tomorrow. So for 200 applications, I've had 2 interviews or have had 2 interviews. It's insane. I'm fixing to change my name to something more conducive in this work environment to getting a job. But anyway, so what has been nice, though, about this time is that I haven't had a chance over the last probably 6-8 months to do any sort of writing, which is on my heart. I'm a musician. I love to write. I love to create, but I've been so busy with work, I haven't had a chance to do it. And during this time, I'll apply for a few jobs in the morning, and I say a few, like 25, 30 jobs in the morning. And then I've been recording in the studio. I've been writing music. And you know what's been awesome about it? I've been writing some of the best stuff I've ever written in my life. I've been writing some of the best stuff. It's so cool. But I never give the opportunity to do it because I'm following that script. And people look down on you. That's what's so crazy about it, is that in this society today, if you're not following that script, the world immediately pushes back as if there's something wrong with you. Now, yeah, I'm not. You got to pay your bills. You got to go through and do that. And like I said, I'm sitting here exploring this podcast and doing this, which is something I've also always wanted to do and haven't had the opportunity to do until just the last couple of months. But you have to get to a point to where you reprioritize your life. And the only way to do that sometimes is if you just have the time to do it. Because remember, we're trading our time for money. There's a transaction that occurs. And if you're sacrificing your time, which is basically, if you think about it from a very esoteric and very like top-down perspective, that time is given to you by God. If you think, the equation goes time is money, so time equals money. So if you think that time itself is a currency, God has given you currency, right? He's given you time. And what you do with that time is up to you. The Bible's really clear with the parable of the talents. It's like, look, I gave you this, right? What did you do with this talent, right? Did you invest it? Or did you squander it, dig a hole and put it in the ground? What did you do with your time? What did you do with what I gave you? What did you do with the talents that I gave you? Think about that, because at some point we're going to have a one-on-one conversation, and we're going to be like, dude, I was following the script that I was given. I went to school and everything. Because I remember when I was in college, and I may have told this story before, I don't remember, but I was in college and I'd gotten my associates, and I was on to the higher end of the bachelor stuff. And I had my schedule full, and it was all music classes because, I'm a musician and that's what I was into. And the gal was like, look, you can't go through and schedule your classes until you declare a major. You can't do it. You have to declare. And I was full of music classes, all theory stuff that I was all interested in learning. And I was like, man, what would my parents think if they saw that I was a musician? They're going to tell me that that's a worthless endeavor and you can't make any money at it. So I'm sitting there like having this existential crisis in the counselor's office going, well, gosh, now I got to plan out the rest of my life right here in this chair. I'd already planned out what I wanted to do, and it was like, well, I'm not going to make enough money on that. So I switched everything over to finance in that chair. and it changed the trajectory of my life. And I've hated it the whole time, because I got in line with the script, what I was supposed to do. Not what I felt like I was called to do, but what I was supposed to do. But see, here's the thing. God nods. God gives you nods in life whenever you try to go through and get back on that predetermined script. When I was in Phoenix, I was in a band and we were playing, and the band just kind of got to a point where it just kind of broke up, and I'm at my job, and my job is actually going really well, and they were like talking about promoting me, and it's going really well. And I was sitting there with my wife at lunch one day, and I said, look, I'm here at a crossroads, because, I was still, I just turned 30, and I was like, look, I really want to keep doing music, but I have an opportunity to really grow within this company if I really just dig my heels in and lean into it. I said, but there's something inside of me that can't let go of the music, and I wish I could, because it'd be a lot easier, because this looks great. This opportunity looks great, but I can't let go of the music. And the thing is, we just made this decision, and she said, well, I think you should go for the music. And so I said, well, we need to move somewhere. And so I said, well, then I need to be around where the musicians are. So I said, well, I can move to Seattle, Los Angeles, Nashville, New York, Chicago, Austin, Texas, like big music cities. And so we, did research on all those, and basically we ended up settling on Nashville. And I said, okay, well, you know what? Sounds good. I'll just throw my hat in the ring and see how that works. I applied for a job on LinkedIn. Again, I'm looking for a job now. I have over 200 applications, and I have another interview tomorrow. So the ratio is basically you have to put in 100 applications as a straight white male to get one interview. So far, that's the ratio. To me, I actually think that that's a little higher, because one of those interviews was because a friend of mine actually referred. It's crazy. Anyway, so that night I just started glancing at jobs and applied to one, and within 30 minutes the recruiter contacted me, and we emailed back and forth until 9 p.m. that night. That's unheard of. That's unheard of. And so then she was like, okay, you know what? You applied to this job, but you're really overqualified for that job. Let me put you in for this one. I can get you more money. I was like, well, whatever. It's not really something I wanted to do, but okay, you can go through and check it out. The next day, she set up an interview, and I was able to go through and talk, and it was good. It was in a department that I necessarily wanted to do, but whatever. So within 2 days, they came back, and she made me an offer. And I said, look, it was just a couple grand above where I was at. And I was like, look, man, Nashville is a higher cost of living, and da-da-da-da. I just started looking. I'm just going to keep looking. And she said, okay. The next day she came back, and she increased the total salary and paid for relocation. I was like, okay, I guess we're moving to Nashville. Well, then it came time. So this is where it's like, it just happened within the course of a couple of days. And it was like, wait a minute, am I supposed to do this music stuff? Like what? Like it just happened. Like it wasn't supposed to. And, so I'm like, well, crap, man. Now, what am I going to do? How are we going to get out to Nashville? Now I've got to go through and figure out how to move and all the stuff. So it's 4th of July weekend, literally the 4th of July. And I'm calling around, and there's no room at the inn anywhere. There's no room at the inn. I'm like, man, what's going on with this stuff? This is crazy. So finally I find this place, and this gal is, answers, and she's the property manager. She's got this real rough voice because she's been smoking her whole life. And, I said, hey, listen, I'm moving out there. I need a place to stay. They had these single-family homes that they're renting out. And she says, yeah, we don't have anything. We don't have anything right now. And I was like, okay, sounds good. She's like, they're building one, but it's not going to be ready for like a month. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's not going to work. So I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, man, this is so despondent. And I was just praying about it. I was like, God, I've got this job, but now I don't have a place to live. Well, like 20 minutes later, I get a call from a Nashville number, and I'm thinking, okay, well, it's, one of the places. When I get on I answer the phone, and it's like, hey, is this Jones? I was like, yeah, this is Jones. And she's like, hey, listen, do you need to come out, or can you come out by yourself first? And I said, maybe. She said, because look, I called the building manager, and he said he could probably go through and get that house ready in about 2 weeks. But if you're willing to come out by yourself first, because I already had a start date for this. I was like going to have to live in my car, she says, you can stay in my guest bedroom. I was like, what? What? I was like, well, yeah, I can probably come out by myself. So long story short, she's like, I don't know why. She's like, I've been managing properties for over 20 years, because we got to talking. We actually became really good friends, because we'd sit out and do porch time in Tennessee, and she'd have her Evan Williams whiskey and smoke half a pack of cigarettes, and we just sit out on the porch and talk like all the neighbors would. It was great. And she just told me, she said, I don't know what it was about you. She said that just listening to you, you just sounded like you needed a friend. And she said, in 20 years of doing this, I have never invited anybody to come and stay with me. She's like, I don't even know what came over me. She said, and all my family thought I was crazy. Like, my colleagues thought I was crazy. But she's like, I don't know why, but I had to let you stay in my room. So I did. I stayed in her guest room for like 2 weeks. And the thing is, okay, so what did I say? There's the script, right? There's the script that we're supposed to follow. And then there's the script, right, that life tells us that we're supposed to follow, right? And then there's the script that God's actually placed in our life. And when you get onto the script that God is wanting you to follow, everything changes. Like, he moves heaven and earth to be able to get you there. Again, like I said, she was like, this is crazy. She's like, I can't, and she would even tell me sometimes, she's like, I can't believe I have some random guy from Phoenix, Arizona that's like staying in my guest room. She's like, but it's just how it was. And like I said, we became great friends. She's such a great gal. But it was because I realigned myself with the purpose that God had for me, which has something to do with music. I don't even know what it is fully. And it's funny because I say all that, and you may be shouting at me from your speakers out there saying, well, you idiot, quit applying for all these finance jobs. Clearly that was not the answer. But see, here's the thing. It's like I've put in 200 applications or more. I quit counting at like 150. And it's just been like an uphill slog. And I'm just like, well, then God, what is the next step? Like, where are you taking me on this stuff? And so I have no idea. I'm just waiting for that, waiting for that voice on the other end of the phone saying, hey, I got a great opportunity for you. Good old Peggy. But I don't know. I think that's what's so wild about this whole thing. And with podcasting and everything else, it's like this is such a different avenue than what I'm used to. But it just feels like, again, like she would say to me, she's like, I can't believe that you're staying here. Like, that's completely outside of the norm. But I feel like that with all of this and with this process. And it's been incredibly frustrating. And every single day I'm like, man, I feel like I'm losing my mind. But for whatever reason, I feel like I'm in this like flow state of where I'm supposed to be. God told me one time, I was sitting down praying about it, just praying about all this stuff. And he said, look, and I'm not a prophet, this is just our conversation. And he said, look, when you live inside your comfort zone, he said, it's like you get constipated. This is the way he described it to me. He said, everything gets stuck when you live inside your comfort zone. Everything gets stuck because you don't want to move anything. You want to keep everything just the way that it is, right? But he said, but when you get outside of your comfort zone, he says everything liquefies, right? And I'm not trying to be graphic, but he said, this is what he told me. And he said, once you get outside, then everything starts to move again. And he said, and you get out in the open, and he said, now I have the opportunity to move you wherever I need you to be. And it's like, I feel like I'm just like a cork in the ocean right now, just kind of floating around, sending out job applications in a bottle. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with it. It's a very interesting spot. So all that to say, to come back around to full circle to this notion of having a script. I think so many of us are living inside this comfort zone, and it's not even really comfortable for that matter. Most of us hate our jobs. Like, most of us hate our jobs to the point where it's like, we sit there and just put up with it every day. And it's like, we don't care about our 5-year plan. We don't care about even growing in the company. It's like, we just want a paycheck and we want to go home and we want to be unbothered. Most of us are there, right? For those of us that are actually enjoying the job, like I think most of those folks are NPCs. I really do. I used to think that I used to think all that was just hocus pocus, mumbo jumbo stuff, but I'm really starting to believe that there really is something to that. Whether they're, legitimately flesh and blood folks with a soul that just, are oblivious, or they're literally part of this overarching simulation. I used to, again, all the simulation stuff I thought was just whatever, but if this is a quote-unquote video game, it would stand to reason then that you would have an overarching script or objective, right? And you've got to follow that objective if you want to advance within the video game. But if God made you special, which I believe wholeheartedly that he did, and he gave you your own set of instructions that you have to sit and really think about, then those set of instructions are going to carry you differently through this world than if you follow these artificial instructions. So let's unpack that for just a second. In the game Skyrim, for example, which is a really popular game, in the last 20 years, and you can go through at the beginning of that video game, and this is a similar, kind of scenario for a lot of video games, but you can go through and you can pick your character. And your character is going to have a very specific set of attributes. So you can have I'm making something up. You can have a warrior, and he's going to be stronger, and just without doing anything else, his skill tree is going to be stronger and more apt to go through and to do hand-to-hand combat, that sort of thing. You can get an elf, and they're good at magic, or you can get, there's this cat thing. It's been a long time since I played it, but my point is every single one of those has got a different set of skills that are intrinsic to that specific type. So, for example, musicians are going to, because I is one of them, musicians are going to be typically more creative. They're going to be more emotional. They're going to have more of a drive to go through and to kind of be more transient in terms of being able to get out and about and more nomadic. I move all the time. I love moving. Then you're going to have somebody that's more analytical, like your CPAs, your bean counters, and so forth. And they just love numbers, and they love doing it. And they just have a natural proclivity towards it. Well, I am a musician that went through and went to school for all the bean counter stuff. Now, I got good at the bean counting, right? So I can go do it. And I was, I won't say exceptional, but I did exceed all throughout my career. But it's not something that I enjoy. It's like I went through and leveled up that skill tree, even though that's not the character that I am. Imagine what would happen if I leveled up that skill tree and how I could go through and progress on that script. And see, I think when we realize that that's the case, you can start playing the game dramatically differently. There's a guy that I follow. I believe he's kind of a newer influencer, but I really love his stuff. Joshy Squatchy is his handle. You can find him. He's on TikTok and Facebook and everything. But he posted something yesterday that I thought was pretty interesting. He said, "You are the glitch in the Matrix. You are the glitch in the Matrix." And he said they're coming after you. Through energies and everything else, which I tend to agree with. I feel like we kind of do get attacked here or there, but you've got to learn and I accept the fact that you are that glitch in the matrix. And once you kind of realize that that's what you are, you can start navigating differently. You can get off of that script and start going through and living a life that's more in more congruence with who you are. It's like, if you've ever seen that movie Wreck-It Ralph, Princess Penelope, she's the glitch. She has a glitch in the game. And so when she's driving, and she'll just like literally like she'll glitch out of existence, and she'll go through walls and all kinds of stuff. Well, at the beginning of the movie, it was like a curse. She's like, man, she's like, this sucks. I hate being a glitch. But after a while, she learned how to use that glitch to her advantage, and she became like a really like exceptional driver, because she was able to identify the attributes of that glitch and to learn how to use it to her advantage. And I think that that's where we're at today, especially as we're going through and identifying that this script that we've been given the majority of our lives, it just doesn't fit. You know, you're going to go to school, and then you're going to go to school again. Then you're going to get a job that you don't even like, so that you can exchange your time for money. Now, here's the thing. This summer, I went from white collar to blue collar, and now I'm like back in the hunt for white collar again. But what's interesting is these blue collar guys and the white collar guys, they're totally different. And I'd never worked in blue collar before. The blue collar guys hate school. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them do. A lot of them were like, we didn't excel in school. We didn't do that sort of thing, and so we just kind of bided our time, if you will. But these guys, a lot of them, as a matter of fact, one of the guys that I was working with was like 17. He dropped out of high school and was doing the electrical stuff like when he, quote unquote, should have been in high school, because he just decided he wasn't going to do it. Well, he's following a different script, but what they've done that I've been able to see is they've got really two scripts. You've got the white collar script and the blue collar script. And the white collar script requires that you go into an office and you sit still and you don't ask questions. You're not supposed to like deviate from anything. You're just yes, sir, yes, ma'am. You work your 40 hours and then you go home. Well, with the blue collar guys, their whole script is a lot different, because they're going to go in and they're going to work 80 hours. Like, there's a completely different set of circumstances that's attached to it, because at the end of the 40 hours for white collar, you are completely mentally drained. It is such a ridiculous, I don't know how to describe it if you've never done it, but you get out of work and it's like you don't have mental space or capacity for anything else. You're wiped. And at the end of the blue collar side, you're completely physically drained, right? And so you don't have time. So again, you've traded your time for money so that you don't ever have the opportunity to explore that individual that you are. Or when you do explore it, you don't have enough time to be able to do it. And as we discussed yesterday, with inflation and everything else, now they're making it so that even if you do have a couple of extra bucks at the end, or you do have a little bit of extra energy at the end, that we're not able to afford to even go down that road. We can't afford to go through and to do those niceties. You know, like, people are cutting those things out. And now people are starting to go through and cut out the necessities and the things that they need. It's just our world keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I think that this is all kind of leading up to this great event, because people will not change on their own. You have to encourage them to do that. And sometimes the only way to do that is to go through and, just like what you see happening, you have to make your world smaller and smaller until you basically have to jump, you have to let go. And for the people that have, quote unquote, woken up or are waking up, it becomes a very frustrating process, right? It's because you see this and you have to see people that are lagging. But this is the caveat, and I think that this is the thing that's incredibly important. You have more time to prepare. Just like what we were talking about at the beginning of this podcast. You have more time to prepare physically, mentally, and spiritually, right? You have the opportunity to be able to go through and to pray You have the opportunity to be able to go through and to learn and to prepare, obviously physically, food, water, et cetera, et cetera. I wrote a song about this entire process and kind of the experience of going through it. It's based out of the book of Jeremiah, chapter 6. The song is called Rejected Silver. And the premise is that the silversmith is going through and he's refining out the silver. He's scraping away the dross and the impurities to go through and to make pure silver. And the big thing is that you don't want to get rejected. In other words, you don't want to have those impurities and then not be included in the silversmith's pick, right? In other words, God's pick. You don't want to have that. And it's referring to it was referring to the Israelites, but specifically it was let's look it up. It's Jeremiah chapter 6. This is the cool thing about the internet, man. You just pull it up. See that you got to take the good with the bad, right? And then let's look up silver here. Silver. Yeah, it says, I have made, this is starting in verse 27, but I was trying to see who was specifically. It was talking specifically about the Israelites, and specifically, I want to say it was the house of it was one of the tribes in particular. I was trying to find it, but the verse, though, to get back to it, is I have made you a tester of metals, and my people the ore, that you may observe and test their ways. They're all hardened rebels going about to slander. They're bronze and iron. They all act corruptly. The bellows blow fiercely to burn away the lead with fire, but the refining goes on in vain. The wicked are not purged out. They're called rejected silver because the Lord has rejected them. And he's talking specifically, just like it says there, those people that refuse to go through and to acknowledge what's going on. The people that, or the people that specifically see that things are off and they're just intentionally going through and rejecting it. Like they're not like taking hold of the accountability required in order to be able to make the decisions to like better themselves. It's kind of like, if you want to think about it in the physical, it's kind of like going through and getting diabetes, but it's like diabetes that's connected with your diet. And it's like, oh man, I have this and I got to watch my blood sugar all the time, but you still eat cake all the time. It's like you're not taking accountability for what you're putting into your body. I've seen so many different people that have said, hey man, you know what? I completely reversed my diabetes because I cleaned up my diet. I mean, like they took accountability and cleaned it up. The same is true in what's saying here. It's like, look, you've got all this evil in this world that is not going to be, that's just going to end up being in that rejected pile. And that's what the song is about. The song is about taking accountability for yourself and for praying for those people that refuse to wake up, right? Don't be in that mix. It's like the chorus goes, I refused, like, I'm trying to remember now, like when I'm not singing it, I can't remember, but it's like, I refuse to believe that you can't cross the great divide. Right. That's not right, but the song will be out this coming Sunday, September the 1st. I'll post a link to it once it comes in, but it'll be out everywhere you stream. But it's important though, as we're heading into this, to get back to the whole script thing, that we need to identify who we are, right? Because if you're off living a different life and you're not fulfilling what it is that God called you, you may be taking on things that are contributing to your downfall, right? Maybe even unintentionally. But that's why we have to be intentional at the way that we look at ourselves so that we can get onto the right script, our script, the one that God put on us, so that we can go out and fulfill our lives the way that he wanted us to. Because he gave you talents. He gave you like incredible gifts. And to leave that on the table is really kind of to spit in the face of God. And I know that seems extreme, but really ask yourself if that's the truth. Ask yourself that hard question. Am I using the talents, gifts that God gave me every day? Or am I applying to 200 applications than something that is not? As I stare in the mirror today. We are definitely caught between worlds. This is the Reality Halfway House.